If you've ever felt the sting of accusation, the heat of judgment, the pressure to explain yourself, and you froze or stumbled or said too much, then you already know what it feels like to lose. Not because you were guilty, but because you defended yourself, and in doing so you handed your enemy the only weapon they needed, your reaction. Today, you're going to learn why the smartest people never defend themselves, not because they're hiding something, but because they understand a truth that most never grasp. Defense is weakness disguised as honesty. And in the real world, where power is everything and perception is law, weakness is the only unforgivable sin. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you saw someone truly powerful scramble to explain themselves? When did you ever witness a master strategist beg the crowd to believe them? You didn't, because they don't. The powerful do not defend, they redirect. They reframe, they vanish into silence while their accusers drown in their own noise. And by the time the dust settles, the one who stayed calm is the one still standing. This is not about being right. This is about being untouchable. And if you want to survive in a world that rewards control and punishes vulnerability, you need to understand why defending yourself is the fastest way to destroy your own image. Let's begin. There's a moment that happens in every confrontation. Someone questions you. They imply you did something wrong, that your intentions were dark, that your character is flawed. And in that instant, your instinct kicks in. You want to correct them. You want to set the record straight. You want them to know the truth. So you open your mouth, you start explaining. You justify, you clarify, you add context. And with every word, you dig yourself deeper into a grave you didn't even know you were standing in. Because here's what you don't realize in that moment. The accusation was never about the truth. It was about testing you. It was about seeing if you would crack, if you would show emotion, if you would give them something to work with. And the moment you defended yourself, you failed the test. You revealed that their words had power over you. You showed them exactly where to strike next time. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. He watched men of great talent and intelligence fall from grace not because they were guilty, but because they couldn't stop talking. They thought that if they just explained enough, if they just made people understand, everything would be fine. But it never was, because the more they explained, the more suspicious they looked. The more they insisted on their innocence, the more people wondered what they were hiding. This is the cruel paradox of defense. The act of defending yourself makes you look guilty, even when you're not. Because in the theater of human perception, only the guilty feel the need. To explain, the innocent, the truly powerful, they don't explain. They don't need to. Their silence speaks louder than any defense ever could. Think about it. When someone accuses you and you immediately jump to defend yourself, what are you really saying? You're saying that their opinion matters. You're saying that you need their approval. You're saying that you're willing to submit yourself to their judgment. And in that submission, you lose all your power. Because now you're playing their game, you're on their turf. You're dancing to their tune, and no matter how well you defend yourself, you've already lost simply by agreeing to play. The smart person sees this trap from a mile away. They understand that the accusation itself is not the real battle. The real battle is over who controls the frame, who sets the tone, who decides what matters and what doesn't. And the moment you start defending yourself, you've handed control to your accuser. You've accepted their frame. You've validated their right to judge you, and once you do that, you can never fully win because you're fighting on ground they chose. So what does the smart person do instead? Nothing, absolutely nothing. They let the accusation hang in the air. They let it sit there, unanswered, unacknowledged, as if it were beneath their notice. And in that silence, something magical happens. The accusation loses its power, because an accusation without a reaction is like a punch thrown at air. It has nowhere to land. It dissipates, it becomes meaningless. But more than that, the silence creates doubt. Not doubt about you, but doubt about the accuser. Because when someone makes a big accusation and the accused doesn't even flinch, people start to wonder. They start to think, maybe this person is so far above this that they don't even need to respond. Maybe the accusation is so ridiculous that it doesn't deserve attention. Maybe the accuser is the one with the problem. And just like that, without saying a word, you've turned the tables. This is the power of non-reaction. It's not passive. It's not weak. It's the most aggressive move you can make because it refuses to give your enemy what they want. They want your emotion. They want your justification. They want you to scramble and sweat and show weakness. And when you give them nothing, when you remain perfectly calm and utterly unmoved, you become terrifying. Because now they don't know what you're thinking. They don't know what you're planning. They don't know if you're ignoring them because you're guilty and confident or innocent and unbothered. And that uncertainty is your weapon. Let me tell you something about human nature. People are not logical. They like to think they are. They like to believe they make decisions based on facts and evidence and rational thought, but they don't. They make decisions based on feelings, based on impressions, based on who seems more confident, more in control, more powerful. And confidence is not proven by what you say. It's proven by what you don't say. When you defend yourself, you're showing that you care what they think. You're showing that their words got to you. You're showing that you're emotionally invested in their opinion. And that makes you look weak, because strong people don't care. They don't need approval. They don't need validation. They exist in their own frame, and everyone else either accepts it or gets left behind. But when you stay silent, when you refuse to engage, when you look at your accuser with calm, cold eyes and say nothing, you send a very different message. You say, I am so far above this that I don't even recognize it as a threat. You say, your opinion is so irrelevant to me that I won't waste breath on it. You say, I know something you don't, and I'm not going to tell you what it is. And that message, that unspoken communication, is more powerful than any defense you could ever mount. Now I know what you're thinking, but what if people believe the accusation? What if my silence is taken as guilt? Here's the truth. They're going to believe what they want to believe regardless of what you say. If they're inclined to think badly of you, no amount of explanation will change their mind. In fact, the more you explain, the more ammunition you give them, because now they can pick apart your words. They can find inconsistencies. They can twist your meaning. They can use your own defense against you. But if you say nothing, there's nothing to attack. There's no statement to dissect, no words to twist, no emotion to exploit. You become a blank wall, and people can project onto you whatever they want, but they can't pin anything on you. And over time, without fuel, the fire dies. The accusation fades, people move on. And you remain untouched, your reputation intact, your power preserved. This is what Machiavelli meant when he said it's better to be feared than loved, because fear comes from mystery, from unpredictability, from the sense that someone is capable of things you can't quite see, and silence creates that mystery. It makes you unknowable. It makes you dangerous, not because you've done anything, but because you've refused to reveal yourself. And people fear what they cannot understand. There's another layer to this strategy that most people miss. When you refuse to defend yourself, you force your accuser to keep talking. And the more they talk, the more they reveal about themselves. They start to look obsessed. They start to look petty. They start to look like they have an agenda. And the audience, the people watching this whole thing unfold, they start to turn on the accuser. Because nobody likes someone who kicks a person who isn't even fighting back. This is the beautiful irony. By not defending yourself, you make your accuser look like the aggressor. You make them look cruel, unfair, unreasonable. And you do it without lifting a finger. You do it simply by staying calm and letting them exhaust themselves. It's like watching someone scream at a statue. Eventually, they just look crazy. And you, the statue, you look dignified, unbothered, powerful. But here's where it gets even more strategic. Silence doesn't mean you do nothing. It means you don't react in the expected way. While your accuser is busy trying to get a rise out of you, you're observing. You're gathering information. You're watching who supports them, who stays neutral, who quietly sides with you. You're learning their tactics, their weaknesses, their desperation. And when the time is right, when you have all the information you need, you strike. Not with emotion, not with defense, but with precision. Maybe you don't strike at all. Maybe you just let them destroy themselves. Maybe you watch as their obsession with you becomes their downfall. Because people who are desperate to prove something, who are desperate to make others believe their narrative, they make mistakes. They overreach. They say too much. They alienate allies. And you, by staying silent, by staying calm, you avoid all of that. You remain clean. You remain sharp. You remain in control. This is the essence of Machiavellian strategy. It's not about being loud. It's not about being aggressive. It's about being smart. It's about understanding that power is not won through force, but through positioning. And the best position is always the one where you're not expending energy defending yourself, but instead watching your enemies expend theirs attacking shadows. Let's talk about what happens when you do defend yourself. Let's say someone accuses you of something, and you immediately launch into a detailed explanation. You lay out the facts. You provide evidence. You reconstruct the timeline. You explain your intentions, you make a compelling case, and you know what happens. People start analyzing, they start picking apart your story, they start looking for holes, they start questioning details that didn't even matter before. Because by defending yourself, you've invited scrutiny. Before you said anything, the accusation was just noise. It was one person's opinion. But the moment you engaged, you turned it into a debate. You made it legitimate. You gave it weight, and now everyone's involved. Everyone's taking sides. Everyone's examining the evidence. And even if you win the debate, even if you prove your innocence, you've lost something far more valuable. You've lost your mystique. You've lost your untouchability. You've shown that you can be rattled. And once people know you can be rattled, they'll keep trying. This is why smart people never defend themselves, because they know that defense is a trap. It's a game you can't win. The only winning move is not to play. And when you refuse to play, when you refuse to engage, you maintain something that's worth more than being right. You maintain your power. Now, let's be clear, I'm not saying you should never address false accusations. There are times when silence is not enough. There are times when you need to act, but here's the key. You don't defend, you reframe. You don't explain, you redirect. You don't justify, you attack. If someone accuses you of being manipulative, you don't say, "I'm not manipulative, here's why." You say, "Interesting that you're so focused on my actions. What are you trying to distract from?" If someone questions your loyalty, you don't list all the times you've been loyal. You question their motives for doubting you. You make them explain themselves. You flip the script so that they're the ones under scrutiny, not you. This is the Machiavellian reversal. You take the attack and you turn it back on the attacker, not with anger, not with emotion, but with cold, calculated precision. You make them uncomfortable. You make them second-guess themselves. You make them wish they never brought it up in the first place. And you do all of this without ever actually defending yourself, because you're not playing defense, you're playing offense, and offense always wins. Think about the people you know who are truly respected, the ones who have real power in their social circles, their workplaces, their families. Do they ever scramble to explain themselves? Do they ever beg for understanding? No. They speak with authority. They make statements, not justifications. They set boundaries, not apologies. And when someone challenges them, they don't crumble. They either ignore it completely or they shut it down with a single, devastating sentence. And then they move on, because they don't dwell, they don't ruminate, they don't give their enemies the satisfaction of knowing they were affected. This is the mindset you need to adopt. You need to see every accusation, every challenge, every attack as a test. Not a test of your innocence, but a test of your composure, a test of your control, a test of your power. And the way you pass the test is not by proving them wrong. It's by showing them that their opinion doesn't matter, that you exist on a level they can't touch, that you are unmoved, unbothered, and utterly in control. And here's the beautiful part. The more you practice this, the less people will challenge you. Because they'll learn that attacking you is pointless, that you don't give them the reaction they want, that you're not worth the effort, and so they'll stop. They'll move on to easier targets, to people who do react, to people who do defend themselves, to people who are easier to manipulate and control. And you'll be left alone, not because you're weak, but because you're too strong to be worth the fight. This is how you build a reputation of power, not through aggression, not through dominance, but through calm, unshakable confidence, through the refusal to be drawn into games you didn't choose to play, through the understanding that silence is not emptiness, but fullness. It's the fullness of control, the fullness of strategy, the fullness of power held in reserve, ready to be deployed only when necessary and never a moment before. Let me give you a practical example. Imagine you're in a meeting. Someone implies that you dropped the ball on a project. Everyone's looking at you, waiting for your response. The weak move is to immediately defend yourself, to list all the reasons it wasn't your fault, to explain the circumstances, to shift blame, and even if everything you say is true, you'll look defensive. You'll look weak, you'll look like someone who's scrambling. The strong move is to pause, to let the silence hang for a moment, to look at the person who made the accusation with calm, neutral eyes, and then to say something like, "Interesting perspective," or "I'll take that into consideration," and then move on to the next topic. You don't engage. You don't defend, you acknowledge without accepting. You show that you heard them, but you're not bothered by it. And in that moment, you've won. Because you've shown everyone in the room that you're not someone who can be rattled. You're not someone who plays defense. You're someone who operates on a different level. And what happens next? The person who accused you looks petty. They look like they were trying to start something and failed. Meanwhile, you look composed, professional, powerful, and everyone remembers that, not the accusation but your response, or rather your lack of response, and that memory becomes part of your reputation. The person who doesn't get flustered, the person who stays calm under pressure, the person you don't want to mess with because they won't give you the satisfaction of a reaction. This is the long game. This is how you build power that lasts. Not through momentary victories in arguments, but through consistent demonstration of unshakable composure. Through the accumulation of moments where you could have defended yourself but chose not to. Where you could have explained but stayed silent. Where you could have engaged but walked away. Each of these moments is a brick in the fortress of your reputation. And over time, that fortress becomes impenetrable. Now I want to address something important. Some of you might be thinking, but this feels dishonest. It feels manipulative. It feels like I'm hiding something. And to that I say, welcome to reality. The world is not a courtroom where truth automatically wins. The world is a stage where perception is everything. And if you want to succeed, if you want to protect yourself, if you want to build and maintain power, you need to understand that how people see you matters more than what you actually are. This isn't about being fake. This isn't about lying. This is about being strategic with your energy and your words. It's about understanding that not every battle is worth fighting, that not every accusation deserves a response. That sometimes the most honest thing you can do is refuse to play a game that was rigged against you from the start. Machiavelli didn't write The Prince to teach people how to be good. He wrote it to teach people how to survive and thrive in a world that doesn't reward goodness, but rewards strategy. And one of the most important strategies is knowing when to speak and when to stay silent, knowing when to engage and when to withdraw, knowing when to defend and when to let your silence do the defending for you. Because here's the ultimate truth. Your reputation is not built on what you say about yourself. It's built on what others say about you when you're not in the room. And if you spend all your time defending yourself, explaining yourself, justifying yourself, you're trying to control a narrative that you can never fully control. But if you stay silent, if you stay mysterious, if you stay composed, you force others to fill in the blanks. And more often than not, they'll fill them in your favor, because mystery is attractive, confidence is magnetic, and power, real power, doesn't need to announce itself. So the next time someone accuses you, the next time someone questions you, the next time someone tries to drag you into their drama, remember this: you have a choice. You can defend yourself and lose power, or you can stay silent and gain it. You can explain yourself and invite scrutiny, or you can withdraw and create mystery. You can react and show weakness, or you can observe and demonstrate strength. The smart people, the powerful people, the ones who truly understand how the game is played, they never defend themselves. Not because they're guilty, not because they're hiding something, but because they know that defense is the language of the powerless, and they refuse to speak it. They know that in a world where perception is reality, the one who controls their image controls their destiny. And you can't control your image by begging others to see you a certain way. You control it by being so unshakably confident in yourself that their opinions become irrelevant. You control it by refusing to participate in conversations that diminish you. You control it by understanding that silence is not weakness, but the ultimate expression of strength. This is the Machiavellian mindset. This is the secret that separates those who are ruled by others from those who rule themselves. This is the strategy that has been used by the most powerful people throughout history, from kings and generals to modern leaders and influencers. They all understood one simple truth: the moment you defend yourself, you've already lost. But the moment you refuse to defend yourself, you become untouchable. So stop explaining, stop justifying, stop defending, start observing. Start redirecting. Start using silence as the weapon it was always meant to be. And watch as your power grows, not because you fought for it, but because you refused to fight at all, because you understood that the real battle is not about being right. It's about being in control. And control belongs to those who never let anyone see them sweat. This is how you win. Not by proving your innocence, but by making your accusers prove their relevance. Not by defending your character, but by making your composure speak for itself. Not by explaining who you are, but by being so undeniably powerful that explanations become unnecessary. Welcome to the game. Now play it like you were born to win.